Um, I want to thank everybody for being here. My name's Craig O'Neill, and I've been designated voluntold by Steve Probst to moderate this. But luckily, got the opportunity to get a couple of really good and experienced operators in the room, and very fortunate to have Ned come down and join us to kind of take some questions. My goal here is I have a whole list of questions, and if I run out of these, I can ask them whatever I want to answer whatever questions I have, but would welcome the opportunity for you guys to ask what questions you have. You've got experts on the panel. First off, I think maybe just allow these guys to introduce themselves versus me reading a bio on that. So Will, your closest.
So Will Shutt with Coterra Energy, senior environmental engineer. Been on the operations side of the industry for 20 years, working midstream and upstream. So seen OGI be born and flourish. Going back to the days of the gas finder camera, and still working heavily in the OGI space.
All right, I'm Ned Shappley, the one that he introduced as not and seasoned operator of the camera. So I'm from the U.S. EPA. I'm a physical science EPA in the measurement technology group. I've got about 25 years of environmental measurement, spending the first 15 years at a stack testing company before going to the agency about 10 years ago. At the agency, the group where I'm at is kind of in charge of determining which methods need to go into which regulations and how they need to be applied. My focus right now is primarily more on any type of future modern technology moving forward and how to continue to advance traditional as well as new approaches.
So Jared Metcalf, I've been in industry for over 20 years now, 10 of which I've been dealing with LDAR programs, air specifically using various technologies, but mainly focused on OGI. I've had, like Will said, I've had the left-hand hold gas finder in my hand. It's great to see the next iteration. So I've been putting programs together again for over 10 years now. I can't say that I've seen it all because I learn something new every day as we get put in new situations, new environments, looking at different hydrocarbons. The camera reacts differently to some. I've actually been in a situation where the camera could see something and a TVA could not pick it up. So maybe we can talk about that a little later. So seen a lot of things, and just as the EPA is developing new regulations, figuring out how to best manage those and apply those for my clients.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I would guess so, since this is the optical gas imaging discussion panel for regulations, both of you talked about our wonderful left-handed operation camera. And why have you seen, either from a regulatory standpoint with 20 plus years and looking at various technologies, or from an operational standpoint, why has OGI gotten to where it is? I think, Will, you said that it's, really flourished, right? So why, in your opinion, has OGI, either on a technical regulatory or on an operability side, gotten to where it is? It's kind of the go-to in many cases. Anybody?
From my standpoint, I think one of the benefits that it's had is time. It's had time to become accepted. It's had time to be developed. Operations have had time to kind of accept it and work it into their work practice. The technology is proven. You can find a leak and document a leak. The regs allow for it now. That gives it a big boom. They're fairly easily identifiable through the camera. In most cases, they're very specific. It's easy to specify where the leaks are coming from. It's easy to document where the leaks are coming from, share that throughout the different groups in the organization, from the inspection group to the repairs group or the maintenance group or whatever other group you may need to communicate that to. It's portable. It's easy to carry around. So, but I think the big thing that's pushed is it's had time to develop and become accepted. But the reason that it's developed and become accepted is because it's a good technology.
Awesome. Thank you.
See, I would have to say that the minute that I had a camera in my hand and saw what it was able to do, its capabilities, I thought, no brainer. Everybody's going to be using this. And this is, we're talking late 2000s. To me, it took a while for it to become accepted, a lot longer than it should have, in my opinion. Yes. It's not going to see a 400 ppm concentration leak. However, it's efficient, and the ability to find leaks faster, to me, puts a leg up against other technologies or previous technologies that were there before it, and really get in and reduce emissions. I mean, you can go in and find one large leak, and I know everybody's heard this said before, but you can go find one large leak that's going to make up for thousands of small, 500 ppm leaks right then. So if you're trying to make an impact and reduce emissions, in my head, that was the way to go.
Yeah.
And I just think it was very slow to be adopted, but I think we're there now.
Yeah.
Just in time for other technology.
You have anything to add, Nick?
No. From the agency's perspective, especially if you follow our Quad OB rules, EPA does acknowledge the effectiveness of OGI. Specifically, it is the beezer for the fugitive and covered enclosed vent systems in our recent Quad OB regulation. The reason for is kind of what Jared spoke to, is that instead you can identify leaks a little bit much quicker than a traditional method 21 approach. You're not going to suffer the how would you call suffering through method 21?
Watching paint dry.
Watching paint dry method 21 of just
Quote me on saying that, not him.
the time that it takes. So it's basically it's an effective, proven approach, and for the upstream, we agree that it's part of the beezer, and that's why it's required.
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, I have a whole list of questions, but if you guys want to throw darts and arrows at these guys, yeah, maybe take it a little easy on Ned, but yeah, I can bring this if you want to talk. I know you're loud enough, Mike.
And this is disclaimer, it depends on the day, what your environment is, what the temperatures are. Of course, we all know how the camera works, or a lot of us do. But we have recorded and measured down to 400 ppm range on a good day. Hard to find. The guy did find it. We, took ppm measurement and it was there. So, but that's rare.
Any other questions from anybody? Quiet group? Okay. So on as we look at, kind of the regulatory landscape, I know that Appendix K is unique in how it really brought together maybe I'm putting people on a spotlight, but even on an industry's perspective, open the door, if you will, in my opinion, for optical gas imaging with a reference subpart. Specific to like Appendix K, I think there may be some regs in Colorado, either on a state or a federal level. Do you see Appendix K being adopted into other reference subparts in the future, as it's kind of done a unique framework setting for it, either from you guys or from Ned?
All right. I actually can try that one to start.
Okay.
I mean, EPA was very clear. We've been on the record that there always was an intention to kind of methodize an OGI approach. Even go back to some of the, I'm trying to remember one of the earlier refinery max where there was the attempt to do that, and that was delayed. And so through the oil and gas package, and specifically for gas plants, where there wasn't a standard currently there, we had the kind of mechanism to go ahead and start to methodize that. When we chose to methodize that, we did that through a pretty slow process. For those that are around, I think we had a workshop where a lot of the input that we gathered was from industry and folks that have operated that cameras before. And we used that to go ahead and develop the Appendix K before we proposed it. And then, of course, through 2 different shots, we got hopefully a little bit better towards the end, where one, we do have a formal methodology that we could then cite in methods as we go forward. For those that are aware of the traditional oil and gas rule, we kind of cited a program. So Quad O and Quad OA already had that kind of procedure baked in. So it wasn't appropriate for us to change that procedure. And that's why it's that procedure is maintained in the oil and gas. But as we move to more, let's say, denser components, having a more formalized methodology is going to hopefully continue the consistent approach of that work. And I'll let the folks that actually do the work describe to me if I'm wrong on that one.
No, I appreciate their standardization. The biggest part is training. That's the biggest thing that I've seen through my career is that, I can take anybody in this room and teach them how to use a camera right now, and we can go out and I could put you in an industrial environment and you're going to find some leaks. And I'm going to take a guy that's been trained under our protocols and he's going to go out behind you. He's going to find, in some cases we're seeing 10x. So that's absolutely great that they have standardized that and that there is some required training. There's things in, of course, you don't always get everything you want in a standardization like this. We're adjusting our training, for instance, internally. If a guy misses a leak, there's no 10% leaks allowed for our standards. So we're just taking it upon ourselves to adjust that before we let a guy go out in the field. Because I know whenever EPA enforcement shows up, they're not going to go, oh, well, yeah, you've missed 10% of the leaks. You're okay. No, we want them to find all of the leaks. So there's just tweaks that we've made to our procedures that go a little bit above that. And nobody appreciates the dwell time by component. At least I haven't run into anybody yet that has. That was never the way we've done it. We've been highly successful without it. I think now it does create a bit of watching the paint dry. Because usually, within 3 seconds, you've identified there's nothing there in the scene. And you've scanned the scene, seen no movement, and you're ready to move along. But now you have to sit there and wait, which inherently is going to create different issues. It's fatigue. It's unnecessary fatigue. Are we going to be able to work with it? Yes. So I'm glad that there's standardization. We can work with it. We're making internal adjustments to sometimes go a little bit above. So I'm just glad that everybody's being held to a standard, making sure they go through some training, some time on the camera, being with a senior tech, so that everybody's getting good quality programs, no matter what vendor you use, if they follow the standardization.
So do you have any thoughts on where you would like for it to maybe be applied or could see it applied in the future?
I think the best thing about Appendix K is that it's not applicable to upstream, so I don't have to deal with it right now. I would love to see it stay there. I've got to agree with Jared. I think working towards standardization is a great thing. Being in industry for 20 years, I've seen some pretty wide ranges of camera operators and how they're trained and how they're held accountable. So I think it's a noble effort. Like any other rag, I think there's some things that are gonna catch us up in some details in the long run that are maybe unforeseen consequences, and there's going to be a lot of additional burden on the record keeping training. You know, like Jared said, the sitting there and watching dry and then catching it from another angle.
When you know there's not a leak there.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I think there's, you know, a lot of the efficiency that OGI brings in. I think that starts.
We've done some calculations, and it's a fairly significant reduction in efficiency.
Yeah.
We've done some tests where a guy was sent out to follow Appendix K, but before he was sent out, we had another guy blindly go out, and they found the same leaks. It just took the guy following Appendix K a lot.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot longer. It was about an hour longer in an 8 hour.
And I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot of unintended consequences. Like I said, it doesn't apply to upstream, so in no way, shape, or form, and am I an expert in it? I haven't dug my heels into it and really thoroughly gone through evaluations. I think labor is going to be an issue. You know, once you get somebody into that senior role, somebody wants to pick them off because they need a senior operator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's going to create some labor issues.
Any other questions out there before I keep going? Yeah, no, we've got some talkers. Yes, sir. Mhm.
They got a lean service and they offer two options. You can either use method 21 or OGI following Appendix K. I prefer OGI in my personal opinion, but is there enough vendors and say, well, Appendix K qualified to handle for the 8,000 new facilities that all gonna have to comply in the next 3 years? EPA says, yes, no problem. I beg to differ, but.
Yeah.
It matter, we have to be compliant by 2027.
Yep.
Finding qualified Appendix K contractors, surveys that 9,000 additional facilities than what's currently required. It seems like a huge lift. Like, you need the panel on that.
Yeah, I guess on a technology standpoint, with correct planning, I mean, we can ramp up, and as FLIR, you know, as I believe the leader as far as, I'm a bit biased in my opinion of that, but, you know, if everybody waits till the 35th month, that's going to be a problem. And, you know, so that, you know, it's going to be a problem for a number of reasons, right? It's going to be a problem because you're not going to have a experienced senior technician. But on the camera front, you know, these are things that we've been aware of, you know, and as we've, we got the same question before Quad 08, right? How in the heck can FLIR support, and other camera manufacturers, apologize for I can only speak for myself legally, but how can you support this, right? Quad 08 is going to drive the business to a point where you can't do this. And, you know, we got that from Canada when ECCC, you know, passed some stuff. So that's not something that we're shy of as it relates to a manufacturer goes. I think, as Will stated, I think that maybe the tail end of this, you know, and I know I've heard Jared speak about it, is I think last year Jared said, start now, right? You need senior guys. It's going to happen. Start now. And I think that's a huge key. I think that the service side, I'd rather Jared and Will speak to that, but I think that that's going to be more of the tail wagging the dog in that regard.
I'm lucky that I have a good base. So I've got around 20 senior level techs that now can make other techs. So I'm pretty confident that I can cover, I'd say, most things that are thrown at me. And right now, with it being limited, it's fine, but with these new regs that I am aware of as well. The duration, of inspections, talking tanks, guy running around a tank farm, we'll create efficiencies to get them done as quick as we can, following Appendix K, so that we can maybe do, multiple sites with one tech to try and combat that. There's ways to create efficiencies. Sometimes you have to be creative. Can't be a creative with the Appendix K. That is what it is.
Right.
So mobility around site, if it's a large site, are we bringing a golf cart or side by side to move around to get to the next area to scan? I don't know, maybe, but we try to keep an open mind about it, and we'll accept any challenge and try to figure it out. And if we can't, we're first to say, oh, this is too big for us.
Like I said, we're we're not in the edge in the immediacy, but anybody that reads it knows that it's going to be a challenge. I think, again, I think Jared's got it right on the nose. Get started. That's something that you start working with your vendors on right now. We've internalized all of our OGI programs. So our senior guys, if it becomes applicable upstream, we've got them identified, we've got them trained. We just have to keep them.
There's another hand up over here. Anybody have a different? Go ahead.
Well trained OGI, maybe you can talk a little bit about how the EPA is handle that process, and what the process looks like, how rigorous it's going to be, and you have the expertise necessary. This is a very high level of expertise that there's not a ton of people in the world that might have it to actually get through a rigorous process of qualifying a device that overcomes a human being OGI.
Well, first I'll plug, I've got a conversation. I got to talk tomorrow at 10:15 specific on that subject where I can kind of walk through some of that. We also have a training in about 2 weeks where you'll get a little bit more detail into that one. When it comes to the agency, we're kind of moving with the power of government. We've got a fair number of folks that we can draw from both within the EPA and outside the agency, as well as a pretty substantial Office of Research and Development that's housed in the same folks. So we've got expertise to draw from different approaches, as well as a good set of folks that are in my group that will be handling all that. But happy to have that discussion, and look, hopefully you can come tomorrow to listen to my presentation. If not, I'll spend 45 minutes and take.
He wants to.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't given the room number out yet, but yeah, it's right after the keynotes in the morning. I think your first speaker after the keynotes. Yeah.
The Appendix K or
Quado B, C in a few years.
well, in the best, I'm going to pivot on that one. So I'm in the Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards and have zero compliance or enforcement authority. So we're standard developers. So we evaluate what's capable and what can be done. We also work with the rule writers to make sure that hopefully they're clear for those that are subject to those rules, that are clear, and that they're also, the language is extremely clear. So when it comes to how it's going to be enforced, ultimately, if you're following the regulations, then you're not going to be subject to enforcement. We try to make the compliance approaches clear and present, and yeah, hopefully that's going to be a non-issue. When it comes to timing, whether there's capabilities that aren't, if the capabilities aren't there at the time of compliance, then often we get sued. So it's a good question, but I can't answer exactly how things are going to be complied and enforced upon, or how our Office of Enforcement and Compliance are going to be following up once the rules are implemented.
Good.
For okay, as far as the regular use cameras, they get expected to help the same standard as far as training and ongoing surveys rather than years.
So I'm going to apologize. I'm probably not the best person to answer all those unique Appendix K questions. I can say there's a very, very robust response to comments document that is specific to that question. So I'll kind of paraphrase it and I can talk to you afterwards and kind of point you in the right direction. So there is if you're an existing senior operator, there's kind of a grandfather clause in there that so long as you're kind of maintaining some type of skill level, you may not be held to that same standard. But I don't want to say what that exactly looks like, but I can point you to the document where that's described. Thanks.
Jared, seniors have criteria. How many did you say Montrose?
We're right around 20.
Okay, right around 20 now. Let's say 12 months from the effective date in May. Do you see that number with there being a stronger regulatory driver?
They're going to step in. Yes, there's going to be more focus on it. It's going to need to happen. And we've got guys that are lagging in hours that are right there on the cusp. So hopefully, like you said, we can keep all of our technicians and help have them continue to grow with us.
I guess since this is optical gas imaging, I'll pivot back there. Where do you see maybe optical gas imaging, the next steps for that in regulatory framework, in your opinion?
So I'm going to go with, it's going to be side by side with the handheld camera operator, but I see stationary 24/7 tied into technology that can identify movement. So I think they're going to be utilized for a lot of 24/7 monitoring. People are going to choose that as they get really good over, sensors or other things like that, because they're going to be able to look at a screen and go, okay, it's set at 320, something let go. And you're gonna be able to review that footage and see exactly what happened, what the incident was, and be able to take action on it without a whole lot of further investigation. So that's kind of where I see it, stationary 24/7 monitoring.
Yeah, we did some open houses or some user group meetings, and the word consistent was used, ironically, in all three of the events, was the ground truth, right? I mean, asking, what do you think about optical gas imaging? And I was surprised. It was the consistent statement was that it is the ground truth of what's happening, and what we've seen, at least, again, biased opinion, fully transparent, is that you do have that ground truth, that situational awareness. So.
Yeah, and I think some compliance, but a lot of it will be outside of compliance, just to know what's going on at the facility level.
I think Jared's got a good point with the advanced detection technology, satellite flyovers, the different types of on-site real-time measurement. But, much like OGI was in 05, it's not there yet. And we don't 100% trust it. We've deployed a ton of it in pilot projects. And when we see something, the first thing we do is we send out a camera guy to go, like Craig said, ground truth it. So I think coming down the road, a lot of that advanced detection is going to become more and more mainstream. And so we're going to be provided more options to do detection. I think the other thing that's probably going to be coming down the road is camera quantification. They're going to get it right. They're going to get it standardized. They're going to get it figured out and tightened up, and it's going to become more accepted. I think we're starting to see that already from the regulatory side in the Subpart W updates. So I think those are the two things that I see coming down the pipe.
Speaking of the new technology, Ed, can you like the process that the EPA goes through as you assess new technology that is developed to apply methodologies for files?
So I mean, as any time we do a regulation, we kind of survey what is out there. We try to identify what's best and what's coming down the pike. I can say our oil and gas rule is probably the most forward-looking rule that we've had before, where we've tried to identify that not only in the fugitive emission space, but there's other technologies that are currently under development that are potentially better options moving forward. And, EPA typically acts a little bit slower, but this is our pathway for us to be a little bit quicker in how we're doing that evaluation. So as we developed the rule, we knew all these technologies were being developed. They're all different, so it's hard for us to do a unified standard when things are so different. There's a myriad of options and different ways of doing that. So that's kind of where we landed on an approach. Now, when it comes to how we're going to evaluate that, and I'll speak a little bit more about it tomorrow, it's really just imagine this, it's going to be the most thorough peer review that most of these technologies have been through before. Because at the end of the day, for us, it's a regulatory action. So that decision means something to us. The worst thing that we could do is make a poor decision. Like if we made a poor decision on OGI and then we got forced back to method 21, and that's something we won't want to do. So we're just trying to make the most informed decision. And as I said, we have to talk about it more tomorrow and then over the next few months of my life, apparently. So probably six. Happy to discuss afterwards too if you want to. Thanks.
I imagine part of the process is looking at previous technologies as a standard and making sure that it's at least meets that or is better. Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
It's inside Appendix K.
Yeah, if you go to the new regulation and hit end, it's the last 8 pages of the regulation. The Quado ABC. And it's not, I haven't seen it in a separate PDF document. They usually have a separate appendix,
Yeah.
but the easiest way to find it, go to Quado ABC, get to the end of all 1,400 pages. How many is it? But
1799.
Get to the end of them, and that's Appendix K. That's the biggest the book is.
Yeah, so when the ECFR finally catches up, it'll be in 40 CFR Appendix K. So you could find it on the ECFR that way, but that's typically about 3 to 4 months behind the Federal Register.
You can go ahead and say it. I'm not offended.
I don't think Craig does.
It's only for Appendix K. And they specify that. They said you do not have to follow Appendix K unless the regulation specifically states that you have to follow Appendix K. So one thing that I'd like to highlight that was good that came along with Appendix K is it's only for natural gas processing facilities right now. And so it is, as far as, with my calculations, it's going to be a much, even with the burdens that are there with Appendix K, you no longer have to do traditional method 21, which takes a lot longer. Time is money. So everybody should see a reduction in emissions because you're looking at everything more often. But also, I think time on tools and a cost reduction as well for programs. So I did want to plug that. That's the positive that came along with Appendix K. You have to dwell on components unnecessarily. However, it's still more efficient than a traditional method 21 program.
It does point to the reference subpart, and the only current reference subpart that is promulgated is through natural gas processing plants and on the BAC. Did I get that right?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought there might be one more is coming down the pike. So
It's the only one's
yeah,
promulgated.
the only one's promulgated, yes.
Yeah, there are, like I said, there are more techniques come down
now I could, like, I don't know, B1, could they potentially, with Appendix K, if they did B1, obviously they'd have to change from methane, propane, and benzene to, or methane, propane, and butane. They'd have to change the minimum technical leak rates.
Yeah, so any changes that we were to make in existing federal standards would have to go through notice and comment rulemaking. So we can't just arbitrarily say start using that. However, if a state plan chose to cite that, then it would go through the procedures that the state would typically do if it's through a permit condition.
Separate. Unless they reference Appendix K training, and that's probably what they would do, I would assume. If they want you to have that training and maybe not have the totality of Appendix K be applicable, they would say training and list out the section for training. And it's actually well written. It's easy to follow. It's not ambiguous or confusing. You have to do these steps to be certified.
But right now, that's not, that, to my knowledge, has not. Yes.
So I've got another comparative monitoring question for Jared. Earlier you mentioned that there was an instance where one did not detect a gas, but OGI did. What type, what was the composition?
It was heavy crude. We could see it coming out, but TVA, Phoenix, Bascom Turner was either picking up very, very small amounts or none at all. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Was it a pinhole leak, like high velocity?
Nope. Nope.
Did you share the video?
It'll cost you.
Okay. That's why I voluntarily.
I'll see if I can route it.
Okay.
Share.
Yeah, I can see that the state federal regulatory process combining, maybe, and that's too open-ended of a question to be more directed. With, you were mentioning that this is going to, the alternative methane technology is going to be a very arduous process. How is that compared to like CDPHE, which seems to have a pretty, their Altane process there?
I'm looking around the room to see if anybody's gone through the Altane process. I mean, anybody? No. So one, it's different. So they had their standards. Our standards are a little bit different. We've unlike typical things, we actually put ourselves a time limit for us to act on that. We're trying to be responsive to those requesting. We see those, especially with the upstream oil and gas is a massive source category. So solutions are going to be depending on different type of well sites. So the idea is for us to try to provide as many options as possible for them to get the meaningful emission reductions that that process is going to take a little bit more time. It's a very data focused process. We're asking for a fair amount of information. We're also have been engaged with the technology solution providers for the better part of 2 to 3 years now. And now that we're getting to closer to the end, we're continuing those engagement because, improved measurements means improved emission reductions. And that's ultimately what the goal of our rulemaking is.
Okay.
How states would pick that up? Is that more into the emission guidelines, how that's going to work?
Yeah.
So in the emission guidelines, one of the distinctions is that the states may choose different procedures for doing that, but when it comes to the methodology, that is something that the agency has retained. So the agency is the only ones that will be for anything that's Quad OB, Quad OC, it would need to be approved by the agency. If there's an existing program like CDPHE was based on their SIP or DOC or hydrocarbon rules. So that's still in effect for those rules. But when it comes to new well sites and existing well sites, the technology will be handled by the agency. And the reason that we're doing that is that imagine you have a site that's quickly gone from Quad OC to Quad OB. We want to make sure there's some type of, sorry, I may reverse that. You've got some existing sites. We want to make sure that the rules are consistent and that the approaches are consistent. So that's why we held that back for the mission guidelines rule.
Okay.
You guys talked about where you see GI tech going. Is there somewhere you want to see GI go?
Well, we're working on it, automated, right? Not just stationary, but autonomous through drone or, everybody's seen the Boston Dynamics dog. You know, should we mount cameras on that and let it go? You know, when you receive those kinds of, robotics, you know, dogs, it's effectively just a really expensive remote control car, if you will. But they can be automated. They recognize certain signs that tell them where they're at and what their next step is. So that's kind of where I'd like to see more research done, is autonomous. Yet being able to identify when something's happening, because that's the difficulty with OGI and identifying emissions, is that you're looking for pixel movement, just like you do whenever you're viewing through a camera. So if there was some way to go, oh, I think I see something, then stop, get it in still and see if you're identifying, that would kind of be the next step that I'd like to see.
No, I'll kind of echo where Jared said. I think the move forward is getting rid of the subject or the objective measurement, or moving from one to the other, where either through machine learning or some other type of neural network that identifies, hey, this was a leak, and you kind of take the human component out of that, and Jared no longer has to. Then potentially we can lose the training requirement of Appendix K. So, but I think that's potentially where we see it going.
The robot won't complain about the welter.
No, it'll just start to run out of battery, go back to its charging station, sit down, charge up, and then continue to go at it. And it won't matter if it's day, night, whatever.
I know we're running into the back. I'm gonna put.
Works great for a facility,
Yeah,
but for
not well sited.
1,100 well pads.
No, then you're moving,
doesn't do me a lot of
then you're
good.
moving to drones. And they have the capability now that I've seen, that they build garages for them. They come back to their garage and,
100%.
you know, I think
But
it-
that's,
ruling, there's got to be, you know, I don't think you're allowed to do that necessarily yet. I could be wrong, but that would be ideal. Go to a fixed location, especially on a well site. I mean, you can just pivot around the well and be still and capture that image that you need for the algorithm to analyze and identify emissions that way.
we've actually been looking into that, and that is,
I don't know if anybody has done it
that
successfully
is
yet.
not a inexpensive
No,
process.
no, it's,
You know, and there are certain operating areas, you know, in our Marcellus Basin, that's probably not far off. You know,
Yeah.
we're fairly concentrated in a box. So, you know, we could deploy 3 or 4 drones in strategic areas and hit everything pretty regularly. Our operations in the Permian are spread out across hundreds of square miles, where it really loses a lot of efficiency
Yeah.
in the operations, because it's flying miles upon miles.
and what I envision kind of as the first step is it's going out, it's kind of flagging the sections of videos where it thinks something is for review.
Getting close to time, Ned, I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many comments were made with Quad OABC?
500,000.
Do you have a story of a clean version of maybe the oddest or craziest comment that you got that you?
Oh, there has to be one that was passed around via
I
email.
know that there's some that probably weren't clean. That's, you saw some of them, but.
No, I mean,
If you're just curious, I'm not to put you on the spot, but.
no, and I'm also going to kind of say how we have these things structured. When you're dealing with a comment of 500,000, they get digested down.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the EPA does rely on contractors too. And so much of what we saw was digested down, where we're getting themes. like any comments, if you search the docket, normally find something in all caps and written, single space, no breaks, no sentences. Those are the typical ones, but you know,
Yeah.
normally, you know, we're the worst people on earth, but it's interesting.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was like, y'all had a manila folder of printed, worst comments to go over on
Well,
a Monday meeting.
I mean, once again, we went through two cycles of comments,
Okay.
so this might have just been a rule that just was too many.
Well, thank you.